taking Indian short stories global, selection, translation, representation. Our panelists are Konishka Gupta, Deepa Bhasti, and the facilitator is Bishnu Priya Chaudhuri. Just a few words about the panelists. Deepa Bhasti is a writer and International Booker Prize winning literary translator working in Kannada and English. Her cultural criticism, essays, columns, and journalism have been published extensively in India and international publications, anthologies, and art book projects. She is the author of a children's book, Champi and the Fig Tree, in Kannada and English. Her published translations from Kannada include works by Kota Shivarama Karanth, Kodagina Goramma, and Banu Mushtaq. She is also the recipient of an English Pen Award for the latter, a collection of short stories titled Heartland Selected Stories. Deepa lives and works in Kodagu in southern India. Kanishka Gupta runs Writers' Side Literary Agency, the leading South Asian agency he founded in India. His authors have most recently won the International Booker Prize in 2025 and 22 and shortlisted for the Booker Prize in 2020. Among his notable authors are Banu Mushtaq and Deepa Bhasti, International Booker winners for Heartland 2025, Daisy Rockwell, Booker winner for Tomb of Sand 2022, Avni Doshi, Burnt Sugar, shortlisted for Booker Prize 2020, and Jerry Pinto, Wyndham Campbell Prize 2016. In addition to his publishing endeavors, Kanishka curated a critically acclaimed series for Scroll.it titled Publishing and the Pandemic, a series that features comprehensive reports, commentaries, and first-person accounts detailing the impact of the pandemic on publishing in the Indian subcontinent and beyond. The session will be moderated by Bishnu Priya Chaudhuri, the managing editor of the Antonym Collection Publishing House, a bilingual writer and translator. She brings a unique voice to contemporary literature, seamlessly bridging Bengali and English. With an MFA in creative writing from the University of Central Florida and a master's in comparative literature from Jadavpur University, Bishnu Priya has translated short fiction, creative nonfiction, memoirs, and experimental lyrical prose, enriching the literary landscape. She has edited 2 anthologies of translated short stories and published her first translated novel, No One, as Rono Bishash by Anuparna. In recognition of her work, she was awarded the prestigious Dhwani Fellowship for Literary Translation at the Sangam House Writers' Residency in December 2023 for translating short stories of Bangladeshi author Nasreen Jahan. May I welcome the panelists on stage.
Thank you so much, Gatha Kalidi, and thank you so much, everybody. And what a seat to sit right now, really. It's such a wonderful opportunity. And I think this has been one of those days where you really don't know which session to sit and choose, because all of them are so exciting and so enriching as translators. And I think this time we feel like we have formed a community of translators, writers, artists coming together to listen and talk to each other about all kinds of things. So today's session, which we wanted to talk about, is a form, is short stories, which is why, and I think it's a form that gets a lot of, for some time, there are trends in how we look at short stories. Sometimes they'll tell you it's going out of practice. Sometimes they'll tell you this is the form to start. So before I want to listen to these 2 very wonderful panelists today who come from why they are here together, because we felt while translation is very private, very creative, isolated work, Kanishka is there on the outside, taking that private, creative work to the world. So we wanted to look at this form of short story, more specifically Indian short stories, from these two points, these two locations, and understand what and how and whys of the process. So I'll probably start. This is a generic question for really both of you. I'll start with probably Kanishka today. And then, please feel free to kind of jump in and back and forth. What in your opinion, makes I want to understand, what do you feel about short stories right now, and as a form, as a genre?
So I'm personally very invested in short stories and short story collections, but somehow, like in the last 4 or 5 years, I've seen a lot of resistance to short story collections, not just by established writers, but also by writers who are known for writing short stories. And this has happened despite, a growing interest in short stories from within the writers' community. So you have prizes like the Deodar Prize. The Bombay Literary Magazine is encouraging a lot of, short story, like submissions, also in translation. And so which is why, like an international Booker win for a short story collection, which is the first time a short story collection has won the Booker in both formats, is a very big deal.
Yes.
So publishers are also not, so they are not keen on authors who are doing short story collections, but they would be very open to doing anthologies. For instance, Aleph publishes this short story anthologies, from different languages, and some of them have sold a lot. Like aspiring writers in this panel, they'll keep seeing calls for entries for anthologies, but short stories by writers like as a single anthology is very hard to place, and I would say it's becoming as difficult to sell as poetry. Mm-hmm. For me, the collection has to work as a whole, even if, and I don't look for short stories which have recurring characters, because that allows publishers to sell those as like a novel in stories. But for me, there has to be some sort of a unifying theme. The characters don't need to recur, which is what, Heartland does so beautifully, that despite, no like recurrence of characters, there is a very unifying theme in the collection. And this is what I look for in submissions, like the newness of voice, exposure to a world, a milieu, a set of people that feel very new, mm-hmm. and that should, get read by a wider readership. Like Heartlamp is a Deepa Bhashti project. She's the CEO of the project. It came to me on a platter because Heartlamp is not a book in Kannada. Heartlamp, so she has very carefully and creatively curated a selection of 12 stories, that Banu, like from around 50 stories?
Six collections, I think
50 or 60
55
yeah.
stories.
And when Deepa won the Pen Presents grant, I looked at all the winners, and I reached out to her because I was very taken by the collection, the theme of the collection, and also her conviction. So for me, it's important, to have a translator who is very convinced about the project and the choices they are making about,
right,
the collection and the stories that they are doing.
Yes, a lot of times I think as translators, when we start out translation and before you attempt a novel, we start with short stories. So I'll probably go back to you again. I know you have worked on novels and short stories, and is it like sometimes short stories are put as like a practice ground for before you jump into a bigger, longer work? So how was it for you? Did you start like that, or what, as Kanishka was saying, is like it's something that connects it all together? So almost you see an arc in the whole anthology. It's not a novel, but there is this tying chain link of arc. So I want to know that creative process, yes, there in selection, in how you approached Yes.
Right. When it comes to translation itself, I don't know if translating a short story is very different from potentially translating a novel. Because I always say this, that I'm led primarily by language. I'm not, the language of the text is what draws me into a project, much more than the name of the author or whether it's a short story or a novel or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, I think each project, we all know as translators in this room, each project comes with its own challenges.
Right.
And it's not the short story over the novel or the other way around. So I think when it comes to curating a collection like this, I think what makes or breaks the collection is the selection you make. That was a
right. So was there like a going back and forth kind of process? Because selection, there are like 6 volumes of work, and there is the selection is probably the first round of editing that you do. I mean, editing not into the text, inside the text, but from outside. So how much of that, I know you just said this manuscript was probably, you have already done that. And then, but is that what you look for when you are looking at other collections or anthologies you approach, that unifying kind of?
Yeah, and also one has to also look at the success of the book in the source language. Like I represent the prolific and best-selling Tamil writer Jaya Mohan, and FSG brought out Stories of the True, his like one of his best-selling collections. So while the stories are brilliant, the translator Priyamvada Ramkumar, she's got a lot of fellowships and awards for her translations of stories of the True, and some other works in progress of Jaya Mohan. That also makes a difference, because like an editor sitting in the UK or the US, and even sitting in the offices of MNCs in Delhi, they would want to know how well the author has done in Tamil, in Malayalam. Is this a path-breaking work in terms of the themes it's dealing with, in terms of the writing? So I think that also makes a difference. For me, my response to fiction is very instinctive, and it's very difficult for me to share a recipe for success, but it has to be something new. It has to be something which I haven't read a lot in Indian writing in English, which I think is going through a serious crisis, because despite all these Booker long list and short list, because I mean, at the end of the day, they're dealing with the same kind of themes and settings. So for me, anything which is new, anything which is from the hinterland, anything which is gritty, anything which is opening up, new, worlds for me, works for me. I'm also very conscious of taking on writers, from some of the lesser known or lesser privileged Indian languages, and I no longer restrict myself to for discovering authors, from Hindi, Malayalam.
Right.
Kannada happened with Heartlamp, and then I mean I'm also keen on Odia, I'm keen on Telugu.
Because there's so many languages.
I've successfully placed a translation from this dialect Angika, and then Maithili. There's a book called Kanyadan. It's a slim novel translated by the academic Lalit Kumar. It also won the WOW Prize. Kashmiri. So I'm very open to different languages.
Is there anything?
And that also, like it or not, becomes a USP. If someone is translating a book from Kashmiri, that is a selling point.
Because of its lesser visibility in the global scene. And is there anything? I know probably India is we are so diverse, it's probably always generic commenting on anything becomes a little bit problematic, but I still wanted to understand if you find anything that sort of makes Indian short stories stand out in the global scene. Because I know with short stories, there are so many experiments you see going on, they're breaking the form, all of these things are happening. Do you see that happening in Indian short stories as well? Or, I mean, what makes makes our stories resonate outside, if at all? I know it's a thin trickle, it's just beginning, but just wanted to.
So I just signed up a Hindi writer. He's a maverick. His name is Anil Yadav, and his translation of experimental genre bending collection called, Courtesans Don't Read Newspapers, was published by Penguin recently. I personally feel that any form-breaking, genre-bending short story from South Asia will actually like work against its prospects in the UK, US. So the short stories that I have managed to sell in the UK collection, I mean, there is a very strong emphasis on storytelling, like whether it's Stories of the True by Jaya Mohan, or whether it's Heartland, which is now a Booker winner, and some of Daisy's collection that I've sold. I don't think I have been able to have much success with short stories that have broken form. Like, I was not Jayant Kakaini's agent, but even No Presents Please was a big success, and I don't call it an experiment. So,
But to be very honest, I think it is because they're still stereotyping the stories that come out of South Asia.
South Asia.
what Deepa has done with Heartland is she has done a very daring translation. She has not translated keeping in mind, the UK readers and their comfort level with, like different, dialects or different words. So I think in that sense, her translation is experimental, and that is what I was told at like the ceremony before that, after that, that kind of,
That's a very,
the judges decide to give the prize to Heartland.
that texture that people keep talking
I would
about.
say Heartland, they are like very powerful, emotive, gut-wrenching stories, but they are conventional in a way, but the translation is radical and it's path-breaking, I think. So,
Thank you. But I think
Yeah.
that's a those of us who read either works in translation within India or who read in Indian languages know that there is a whole lot of experimenting that's happening in various
Right.
languages. But I think that just the moment you want to sell it in the UK US markets, then again there is the sense that they don't want to, they're not there yet.
To
So,
accept
to
South
accept
South
that-
Asia as a very avant-garde,
Yeah.
experiment-prone space.
Yeah, exactly.
They are
And
more into. There'll be
it's a conventional,
linear
they-
storytelling will be there. Yes.
Exactly, because it's like expecting books from Africa to have these multi-generational sagas and a lot of Africa in it and that
Yes.
sort of thing. So I
Yeah.
think, which is okay. It's not really
No.
a complaint. They need to go through a
Enough.
generation of publishing those books before they get to the truly experimental
Right.
work.
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
perhaps they are part of these anthologies. Look, for instance, the very prolific translator from Bangla to English, Arunava Sinha, put together an anthology of, Bengali literature, which was published by Penguin UK. And now I think Ashoka Center for Translation, they have tie-ups with publishers in the UK to do city anthologies. I know someone who's editing
Right.
an anthology of like on Delhi, anthology on Chennai. So I'm pretty sure that there will be some stories in those anthologies which are kind of form breaking or
Right.
I think that's where prizes like this help a lot in generating a certain interest, and
Yes,
hopefully
yes.
the next time there is a slightly form defying or experimental
Yeah.
story, then there is a little more interest.
Right, yeah. And also all these, since you mentioned this theme of city stories, right? And when you put together, a lot of times we end up working with multiple authors and multiple translators in one anthology, which becomes the marketability of it versus the creative potential of such a collection is always a space where we don't know how to kind of navigate. But I guess all these different kinds of projects start somewhere kind of pushing those walls.
Just to give an example, so I'm translating a short story for Granta, the online version.
Right.
And it's a very different story in terms of the way it plays with language, the way it examines time, the way it's a very different story, and it's not a story that I would easily read in a Kannada magazine. So I think it's somewhere, and that the only way I could place that story in a magazine like Granta is because of this interest in South Asian stories. So I think we just have to keep the momentum and try and push these form-defying experimental stories, which is why I think what Korean to English translator Anton Hur does very well.
Right, yeah.
So very consciously he translates a lot of genre fiction just to break that idea that Korean stories are just this, and this.
Right.
So
I
by
think
doing queer literature or by science fiction and all kinds of these things, so he's really pushing the boundaries there.
in fact, one thing, I mean, that's actually very interesting, and I also want to tie up that thought with what we started discussing in our previous session about this kind of language that you have acquired for your translation. It's a new kind of not proper, intentionally not proper English for South Asian stories, right? This language is being talked about a lot, and I want to know if that's something. Are we standing on a threshold of looking at a new kind of translation language? Because for a long time, people wanted to. The translation idea was to create a kind of like keeping the audience in mind. Now we are keeping the creation, like where it is originating, the translator in mind. So do you think this shift is sort of going to, is it like a one-off, or it's like a beginning of a changing atmosphere?
So I think even Daisy did something very
Similar,
interesting
yes.
with Tomb of Sand. So she even I think her version was slightly different from the Hindi version of the book. So I think there was a lot of playfulness, and she also retained a lot of words. At the end of the day, it's the choices that the translator makes, the
Right.
conviction with they make the choice. So for instance, Deepa's translator's note in Heartland towards the end, it's become like a seminal text, even though the book is very new. And also the willingness of editors sitting in the UK, US to be open to something
Yes.
like this. I think I'm comfortable sharing this, but it's the editors, readers in the UK and the US who have taken more to Deepa's translation and translation choices than some of the readers in India, and I don't know whether she agrees. So that goes to show how open they are to trying to understand, even working on a text while they are reading a book for pleasure.
I
Right,
think what's been very gratifying and also humbling is how this kind of translation has taken off among students and much younger people, whether readers in their 20s, so many of whom come up to me and said, we didn't know we could also write in such an English, such a kind of English, or translate into such an English. And this is the way we speak English amongst our friends and
Right,
in our
yes.
age groups. So it doesn't employ a Gen Z language. That's not the point. But I think those of us in our 30s, 40s, 50s, and thereafter, we have grown up so much on a certain kind of English. And I think that's why I place so much hope in the
Yes.
younger generation to also understand that there is a difference in language in the way we use it. And we
Right.
don't have to write like Jane Austen or
Right.
speak like that.
I feel with Heartland, I was reading it, and even with Daisy's work and some of the recent works, it's sort of softly but surely it is lifting off a weight from our shoulders to write in a certain kind of English, but sort of claim our own texture, own kind of language, which I feel...
Just to add that, I mean,
Yes.
I think we are 60-something years late in coming to this point, because African writers have been writing this way and talking about this extensively for years and years and years, right from Ngugi to Wole Soyinka to Chinua Achebe and so many others. So these conversations have been mainstreamed, a very long time ago. And even though in India we were talking about writing back to the empire with what Salman Rushdie was doing and all that, this is not as popular a conversation as
or in
not-
practice.
or in practice, especially
Yes,
in practice.
especially in
Maybe it
practice.
is there in
Theory.
like a pedagogical level, but in practice, no one is writing like this.
Right.
Even writing in English like this, forget translating.
Right.
You know, either it is too oriented towards the Western reader, or it is too exoticized, you know, local to the point of exoticizing it. So there is no middle ground in that sense. So I think we
Yeah.
are about 60 years late to this conversation.
Yeah.
So many seminal texts have never been from Indian languages have never been published in the UK, US. Legend of Khasa, O.V. Vijayan, Mustache, a contemporary novel by S. Harish. In fact, Daisy had to win a Booker Prize for Tomb of Sand in order to get her translation of Bhishma Sahni's Tamas get accepted in the US. Can you believe this? It was never published outside of India. So I think we have a long way to go.
Right.
But there is something that I worry about. So because of Daisy, Gitanjali, Banu, and Deepa's win, there are a lot of young writers, students who are bright, and who are bilingual, who are getting into translation. They are being supported by organizations. They are being supported by senior translators. I think many of them are publishing in a hurry, publishing in a rush, and that is actually going to dilute all the impact and the hard work that we've done for.
So,
Yeah,
I
so I
can
think it's
thank you for
like
voicing it.
someone
Yes.
who's not even known for working in a particular language, he or she will suddenly say that I'm doing a book with a major publication, and I'm translating from this language. So I think it's becoming too easy. I think the entry barriers need to be.
Also, I
Uh,
think
re-looked at,
it's the price culture as well, right? Which is
Yes,
which
yes.
is so difficult because yes, personally, it's extraordinary to have won the International Booker for sure, and I'll always be grateful for it. But just to repeat an anecdote,
No, of course, yeah.
I was talking about it in an earlier session. So this girl, I think she was in the middle of her postgrad, or I think she's just finished her postgrad. So she called up to me and she called me up and said that she had published a book of poetry, or I think it was short stories. And she was very clear that she wanted to be the youngest International Booker Prize winner in the world. And my initial reaction was, of course, to dismiss that, but there is a very real danger here so these translators do not understand the rigor that goes behind. There's years and years and years of
Right.
reading and writing, and there's so much involved there. But at the same time, it's very difficult to dismiss students like this and say, hey, no, you shouldn't be aiming for a prize, because I don't want to be discouraging and I don't want to be seen as a gatekeeper when it comes to any prize.
No, I think, I mean, when something reads so easy and relatable, there is a history, there is a backdrop to it.
Which always goes unreported.
Unreported,
right?
yes.
When there is an interview, or
Yeah.
when there is all these, splashed across headlines or whatever, no one talks about the 20-something years that I've been writing myself.
Right.
An overnight success takes decades of work.
Oh,
You just
absolutely.
see it as a, comes out of nowhere sort of thing. But then there is years and years of reading and writing and absolute hard
And making
backbreaking
those
work there.
very fine, winning those wars within yourself, where you break your English and make your English and break it
That
again.
takes time. Someone who's
And-
21, 22 is not going to be able to do that, which is a
Yeah.
good thing. They
Yeah.
So I
shouldn't.
feel that authors or copyright holders or their estates, in case the author is no longer around, and even the translators need to have a strategy for some of the writers who are very prolific. Every few months I see two translations by the same major Malayalam Tamil writer being like published by two different publishers, they cannibalize into each other. The very famous Tamil writer Imayam, there was a time when within a span of 3 months, 3 publishers published 3 of his books translated by 3 different people. I mean, how are you going to, you need to have a strategy. You identify the books that should be published in 1 year, should not be more than 1. And then you also have to like draw up a short list of their books that you will pitch to a UK, US publisher. Not all the books will have a global appeal, no matter how well they have done in Tamil or even in English for that matter. So
what I'm hearing from both of you is the question of patience and question of mindfulness in how you look at the big picture of an author's creative arc and also the process of translation, both in representation and...
Very patient.
Yes, yeah.
Heart Lamp was first noticed by another stories when the pen,
The pen presents. But it took
submitted
them, I think, a year before they, more than a year before they wrote and made an offer and all that.
Sometimes it takes more than a year.
Yeah.
It took me, I'm talking about a book in English, but the Khasi writer Kim Pham Singh Nongengri, he did this epic book, Funeral Nights. It took me 1.5 years to sell it to a publisher in the UK. They are very slow, their timeline, they work very differently. So it is a tough task, you know.
Yeah.
And this, it just feels like that. I worry about how, especially younger people, you know, because there's so much, even after Geetanjali Shrees and Daisy Rockwell's Booker, or, you know, our Booker, there is so much attention, rightfully so, on translation that, you know, young people seem to think that, you know, they just have to do 2 books and the 3rd book they're going to get some major
They are
award.
getting everything on a platter. They are getting funding. They are getting institutional support. Their
There is
mentors
no
are, their
reading.
mentors are getting them copyright,
Yeah.
from the authors. It's not as simple
Right.
as that.
And I think there is also an excitement and restlessness among authors as well, which is kind of, it's feeding into each other, that authors are also very eager to publish for the global readers, and also translators are also, they're thinking, yes, this is the air it's a rising air, so I should, set sail. But I guess it comes down to that very, very rigorous, uncomfortable space of patience and, just going deeper and deeper into it in both ways, like even from the outside, like as an editor, when you're looking at this body of work, or you're looking at a text from the inside, everywhere the patience, the timeline, the thought process is very, very important, right?
At the end of the day, the books have to sell. Like
Right.
even the translations that get published in India, it's not as if after the 2 Booker wins, and recently Heart Lamp's win, publishers have started publishing more translations. On the contrary, I don't want to name names, but there are 2 major publishing houses who've cut down on their translations.
Right.
So they have actually cut down their classics list, their modern classics list, and they want to, they feel that they're not being able to pay more attention, to the marketing and the promotion. So while this, the Heart Lamp has had a huge impact on, Bhasha literature,
Right.
and how the literature is seen globally. Publishers in the UK, US, they respond to text. They respond to an individual work of fiction, non-fiction, or whether it's short stories. In India, if it's a famous writer, they'll just publish everything that the famous writer writes. Even if they're writing a play, they're writing a collection of poems, they're writing a graphic novel. It doesn't work this way. They'll gently tell an award-winning writer that, maybe this is not working, maybe you should do that project, because they have a smaller list, they have a smaller team.
Right, exactly. And I feel also I just want you to kind of go back to the point of the selling, right? The selling point, if it sells. So is there have you seen a certain kind of theme, or is it all instinct, or is there, you look at it for a long period of time and you identify certain patterns, certain kind of stories or texts that tend to work? I mean, there may not be any, but I'm just curious because...
So whatever I feel is very good, which has a universal appeal, which will not alienate the international reader, and which is very well translated, carries some, you know, recognition, like whether it's local, whether they are grants. I pitch a lot of translations abroad. My catalog is full of translated fiction, poetry in translation. I've just sold a book called How to Love in Sanskrit to Norton. These are like poems translated from Sanskrit, Pali, Prakrit.
Yes.
It got a lot of attention. Then Magad by Shrikant Verma, very famous poetry collection, has gone to another stories. But I keep sending translations to you know, publishers in the UK, US. My success rate is 10 or 20%. I'm being very honest with you.
No, I mean,
So,
it
but
makes sense.
because if I am convinced about a project, then I'll keep pitching it. I keep pitching it, whether it's 2 years, 3 years, you know.
Right.
So I don't like put a cap on you know, the number of submissions I have to send out. Yes, I don't take on too many novels in English for the international market.
Right.
Whether it's a writer from India, whether it's a writer from Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, because I see myself as a pan like South Asia agency.
Right.
But I keep selling. I mean, I don't get disheartened if I keep getting rejections, because sometimes, you know, when you stay in constant touch with commissioning editors in the UK, US, sometimes they come back with ideas. You know that.
Right. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
we are looking for this kind of a book, maybe, and we have not published a book from this language into English. Can you find something for us? You know, so you have to be in touch with them.
There's a conversation.
And obviously,
Yeah.
I mean, there has to be, like, you should not be sending out half-baked pitches. You should not be sending
True.
out proposals or translations which are full of errors. So these are basic things that
Yeah.
one has to keep in mind.
Right. And I feel, so one side there are some universal resonance that has to be there, and on the other hand I hear that you fight for the kind of language, that something that makes it very, very much from the location that it sprouts forth from. So I guess there's a balance, right? And that is the balance. There's a lot of food for all us translators here, I think. So I do have some I was asking for final thoughts, but maybe we can have a few minutes for any last questions, because I know translators, and a lot of us are looking for, constantly scanning for projects, reading books, anything, any other questions before we close the session for today? Yes, please. Can we have a... Yes.
Spoke about, she raised the issue of the Gen Z or students nowadays. As a teacher, I found myself introspecting throughout the day long event and realized that I myself often do this, that when children come up to me, maybe in the library, the child is a Bangla speaking child, and she's chosen a book which has been translated into English, Adventures of Hilda, or something of the sort. So she comes up to me and she tells me that, ma'am, I've got this book, I want to get it issued. So there is this tendency of mine that I tell the child, but you know Bangla. So why have you chosen this? Why don't you go back to the original one? So the same thing here, when I was outside trying to go to the books, I realized that I too was doing the same thing. I tended to take up books where the translations were maybe the works that have been translated from Assamese, which I do not know how to read, so they've been translated into English. But then I kept telling myself, but why, I don't need to go through any work which is in Bangla and has been translated into English. So my question to you is, I do not know how bizarre it would sound, that as someone who is Bangla speaking, as someone for whom Bangla is her mother tongue, what would you tell me? Why should I go through a work which has been translated into English?
You mean why you wouldn't?
A Bangla book which has been translated into English, where I can tell myself that I have the original work to read. So I have access to the original work. But why should I go through it, through the translation?
I mean, in case you want to understand language, but understand your own language better in some sense. I don't really know. I mean, I always say, if you can read something in the original, please read in the original, because that's where, I mean, you'll have a far deeper connection to the text when you do that.
But I don't.
Sorry, I read in Kannada, of course, but then I also read, sometimes I also read the translation, mainly because I just want to know what are some of the language choices that, translation choices that the translator has made. So it's a very, it's just for my own understanding, because I also translate. But if I had to read just one version of the text, I would absolutely, most definitely read just the original.
What I want to ask about what I am curious about is, how can I also justify choosing the translation? I mean, it's also important for the child to go through the English translation. How can I justify it?
Maybe the child's Bangla is not strong enough, or maybe, depends on the upbringing. But I think it's a very interesting exercise if you are bilingual. And I saw this with Tomb of Sand, that when it won the International Booker, then people, like readers who traditionally did not read Hindi books but knew Hindi, they were reading Ret Samadhi. And the readers who were reading Hindi books, they were reading Tomb of Sand. So it can be an interesting exercise for people who are bilingual. But in the case of children who want to read the translation and not the Bangla, I think not much can be done.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or maybe, I mean, I don't know if one needs to justify it really, because, or maybe the child is thinking that, let's say Faluna, for example, it's a familiar story. So maybe for them, reading something that is, reading something from a culture that's very familiar to them in a language that they're still learning might be easier, instead of just jumping right to Virginia Woolf or something where the entire culture is different. So maybe that's just a small, easier, a little more comfortable step towards learning and understanding English as a linguistic culture also. Maybe that's one of the ways to do it. So when you read it in a language, when you read a story that you're familiar with in your mother tongue, in a different language, you're making it easier for your, comprehension becomes easier. I think maybe that's one of the reasons why that could be encouraged for students.
I guess, thank you so much. And very recently I met a bunch of, I was in a conference, and I have met people who found their way back to their mother tongue through translation. They started reading the translation and then they, yes, so that is, translation could be a gate opener as well, I feel. It's a bridge maker, it's a gate opener, and our hope is it's both. Thank you so much for the panel. I'm sure there's a lot of thinking point we have here today for translators, for those of us who want to continue translating. Thank you so much, Deepa. Thank you, Kanishka. Yes. Yes. I have the next step.
Okay. So we get off the stage.
Yes, please. Sorry.
Thank you to
I
our
think we do
panelists.
have,
And
we do have some
a small token of our appreciation. Thank you. Kainat.